Hey there, race fans. It's race day top 5 with me, Frank 5. Different background. I'm on vacation, but I'm heading back home tomorrow. Anyways, NASCAR returns from its 2-week break where there was no racing as the drivers and the teams had time to rest and rep up to get ready for the final 4 races of the regular season before we get ready for the playoffs at the beginning of next month. Today, we return to Watkins Glen International for the first time since 2019, as NASCAR didn't participate last year because of COVID. New York wouldn't allow it. But today, we were able to have a good amount of people in attendance today. Another sold-out race at Watkins Glen. Good racing all around. A lot of interesting storylines. But it seems to be the same old when it comes to Hendrick Motorsports and dominating and winning races, as we saw it again today. So let's talk about what happened today at the superspeedway of road course racing. Number 1, Kyle Larson picked up his second road course win of the season. This is his 5th win of the season, and he's shown to be a really good road course racer as he dominated, for the most part, today's GoBowling.com at the Glen, capturing the victory over Chase Elliott, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin. Kyle Larson, I got a feeling, folks, ever since he came to Hendrick Motorsports, he's become a much better road course racer. He wasn't a horrible road course racer when he was driving for Chip Ganassi, but was he really up there battling for wins? With the exception of the 2018 Roval, not so much. He won poles at Sonoma, but he didn't get the finishes that he had hoped for. Earlier this year at Sonoma, he started on the pole, had the fastest car, led the most laps, held off Chase Elliott and Martin Truex for the win, and he backed it up today after a 2-week off week, after the 5 team has had some pretty rough finishes the last couple of weeks, but I still believe that Kyle Larson was the favorite for the championship because a couple bad weeks isn't going to kill momentum. They'll find a way to pick it up after the break, and by golly, they did it today with a really good race car, battling it up front all day. For a track where he's been pretty good at, as I mentioned. He's not the best road course racer, but he's definitely become a much better one since he came to Hendrick. Ran up front a lot with the Gibbs cars today, had a nice battle towards the final stage with Martin Truex Jr. and Christopher Bell, where Larson, in turn 1, actually locked up his right front tire because he went a little too deep and turned around Christopher Bell, who had to start the rear because he failed pre-race tech, which I'll get to that for him and another driver in a second. But that Larson was trying to go for it, and then eventually got by Martin Truex on the last round of green flag pit stops to hold the lead for the rest of the race, even with his teammate coming behind with a full head of steam. Larson ran some lap traffic at the very end, but he was still able to hold off and win the race. And this 5 car, again, is become one of the top favorites for the championship and has become a really good road course racer, as I've seen. So when we get to the playoffs and that Roval happens, because with all the playoff points that he's accumulated, he's going to probably make it all the way to the championship 4. Another thing I will mention for a second is the regular season championship battle is still on at the end of the race. Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin, who is yet to win a race this season, are now tied for the regular season championship. They are tied right now at 917 points. Holy moly, this is going to go all the way to the checkers at Daytona. This regular season championship battle is definitely up for grabs now. And this would be big for someone like Kyle Larson. He wins this and he doesn't win another race or stage the rest of the regular season. That's 15 extra bonus points to his points total, which puts him at 52 bonus points, playoff points if you want to say, going into the playoffs. That is something you need to have in case you have a really bad round. So, Kyle Larson fans, stay optimistic. You're about to possibly win the regular season championship. Number 2, Chase Elliott, the road course king, was trying to come in here and trying to three-peat at Watkins Glen, the track where he picked up his first Cup Series victory back in 2018, dominated in 2019, leading all but 10 laps. Obviously, we couldn't run here last year because of COVID, but Chase Elliott had a lot of adversity today. Like Christopher Bell, Elliott had to start at the rear of the field today. After he was supposed to start 11th, he failed pre-race tech because apparently the rear vent windows, something like that, they did not meet NASCAR specifics according to the rule book. Therefore, Elliott was docked 10 points, fined $25K, and crew chief Alan Gustin was ejected from the track. So our car chief had to be our crew chief for the day. And it was tough for Elliott, so it had to be the car chief for the 9 car today. And it was tough for Elliott to come from the rear to the front. He had a good race car. He was passing guys like crazy. At the end of the first stage, when other guys decided we're going to pit because we want better track position for stage 2, let these other guys pit or stay out and let them pit under yellow, Elliott was able to put his way up to 8th place. Then he restarted in the middle of the pack and had to pit under green because he flat spotted the tires because he was trying to pass guys who stuck back in traffic. But on the scoring charts I noticed during the green flag run when he was all by himself after pitting, he put down the fastest time of the day. I don't think anybody ever surpassed that the rest of the race. Elliott was able to get more track position by the start of stage 3, passing guys like crazy, even getting ahead of Denny Hamlin, who had fresher tires than he did, and that was pretty critical because that meant the 9 car had the clean air and perhaps the car to move and try to run down his teammate, and he was flying. That thing was a rocket ship. Over the radio, he probably said this car is much better than the last 2 cars here at Watkins Glen, which is kind of weird because he won both of them. Unfortunately, Elliott was not able to catch Larson at the very end, but I will say he deserves driver of the day for just starting at the rear and going through all that adversity to at least put up a fight to try to reclaim, show he's the road course king. I mean, he still is, but for him to go from the rear a couple times today to get back up to second, that's pretty impressive. So the 9 team will be a threat, and we got a road course next weekend. So 9 fans, I think you got a good chance to possibly make up for today and get ready for next weekend. Number 3, Martin Truex Jr., who's been very good at Watkins Glen the last few years, battling it out with Elliott for the win, or in 2017, just flat out dominating. He had another good race car today and looked like maybe he was the car to beat. But after Kyle Larson beat him on pit stops, and Truex, by the way, won a stage today, fell behind Larson, and he kept falling behind like his car was just going away on him. And on top of that, the 9 car ran him down and passed him. But Truex probably was the reason why Elliott was not able to catch up, because Truex held off the 9 car for a couple laps, because catching a guy is one thing, but passing him is a completely different ball game. So all in all, the 19 team did have a good result today. This is the second time this year, actually, that the top 3 finishers today finished in the same order that they did earlier this year at Sonoma. So that's pretty cool. Is it a coincidence? To quote the Incredibles, I think not. But Truex and the 19 team definitely brought their A game today, and they got another road course coming up. So the 19 team, I think, is beginning to get back some momentum. I think a 2-week break from racing allowed the team to recoup and regroup and try to get some momentum in these next few races before the playoffs begin. Number 4, Christopher Bell. As I mentioned, he had a really good race car, starting at the rear with Chase Elliott for the same penalty that they faced. His crew chief was ejected from the racetrack, but he worked his way up through the field and looked like he had a car that could contend with Truex and Larson. But as I mentioned, Larson made the pass on the inside of 1, locked it up, and traded a little too hard into Christopher Bell, but he didn't hit him that hard, actually, because you look at him, it's just a little slight contact. But the guy on the outside, when you come to that 90-degree angle of turn 1, you're more than likely going to be the guy that's going to get punted and spun around. But Bell was able to recover and get a top 10 finish out of the day. Larson said post-race after winning, he said, "I apologize to the 20 car. I didn't mean to do that." I don't know if they talked it over after the race. I'm sure Bell was pretty frustrated because he probably had a car that could have won this race. But after that spin, he lost his track position and he could never get a caution to get caught back up. If we had a yellow, Bell could have made something interesting on those restarts because he probably would have been looking for Kyle Larson if he got to him. And number 5, a really rough day for the Penske guys today. Ryan Blaney was the highest finisher of them in the top 15. The other 2 didn't have the best of days. The Penske cars all started 1, 2, 3 based off of the random draw for the way we've been setting qualifying this year, with the exception of new racetracks or premier jewel events that we've been qualifying. Brad Keselowski started on pole, ran really well, but on the lap before the competition caution in turn 6, Keselowski completely lost it. And he's been battling his brakes the entire race because he just said they were very soft, and he went around but only lost 5 spots. He pitted. Joey Logano would go on to win stage 1, but both those guys got deep in the pack, and Keselowski had to make multiple pit stops, and in the final stage, he lost it in turn 1. For the 3rd time, he spun around, and he took out Joey Logano in the process. Both cars were able to finish. Unfortunately, they didn't get the results they'd hoped for, so kind of a rough day for Team Penske in general. So that is closed out at Watkins Glen. Another quick point I need to make is some news happened this week. I've been relaxing on vacation. I hadn't had the chance to talk about it, but I will now. Trackhouse Racing already announced that they had purchased Chip Ganassi's assets at the end of the 2021 season, and they're going to be having a 2-car team next year. Daniel Suarez is obviously one of the drivers, and this week it was announced that the second driver for the Trackhouse team Not totally surprised by this decision. I kind of think it was going to be him anyways. It'll be Ross Chastain driving the number 1 car. They're going to keep the number 1 in NASCAR, and he will be the driver. And kind of funny how this team has the highest number in NASCAR and the lowest number in NASCAR as their car numbers. That's pretty cool, but this is a good opportunity for Chastain. He had a good run today. He had a top 10 going, but he fell back to 12th at the very end. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe lost spot because he messed up in the last few corners, but he still had a good run today. Suarez, not so much, but Trackhouse Racing has got a young crop of drivers that are ready to take it to the next level next year. I think Chastain and Suarez are going to be really good teammates. So this pretty much means what happens to Kurt Busch. I still think he's highly rumored to drive that second 2311 car if they expand next year, because Kurt Busch should not be out of the sport next year. He deserves a top-tier ride that he can help that team and at least battle for wins and possibly a championship. But Chastain and Suarez, I think, will be really good teammates next year. So that is it for road course racing in Watkins Glen. But we're not done with road course racing yet, because next week we're off to Indianapolis. Not for the oval, not the one that people are like, oh, I love Indianapolis 500, but the NASCAR Cup race is so boring. This time we're going left and right on the Indianapolis road course, hoping to bring more NASCAR fans back into the stands at Indianapolis and put in some excitement for them. We've seen what this track has done for IndyCar, and as a matter of fact, IndyCar and NASCAR will both be together at Indianapolis on the same weekend this next week. Second time they've done it, they did it at Indianapolis last year during 4th of July weekend, so you couldn't have asked for a better weekend upcoming. So it'll be a fun race to watch with a new track for the NASCAR Cup Series. Xfinity Series did this race last year. Cup Series is brand new to this, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens. There'll be practice and there'll be qualifying. There are going to be some guys entered like Austin Cindric and AJ Allmendinger that'll sure put on a show and try to spoil the party for some of the Cup regulars. So the questions go and the storylines going into next weekend. Will Chase Elliott continue the road course dominance and win on the 3rd different road course this season, because he's only won 2 races and they were both on the brand new road courses on the schedule? Will Kyle Larson carry over the momentum and the win from today to next weekend? Will Martin Truex win? Will Denny Hamlin or Kevin Harvick finally win a race this year? And what will happen at the playoff bubble? Because it's tight between the Richard Childress cars of Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon, both separated by 15 points. All I know is buckle down, folks, because this Indianapolis road course is going to be one hell of a show, and I cannot wait to see what happens when we get there and start practicing, qualifying, and seeing the action in the Verizon 200. So subscribe, like, congrats to Kyle Larson on his amazing win. Good to have NASCAR back after a 2-week break. The last 3 races, the regular season, to make the playoffs, the heat's on, and the drama is continuing to ramp up. Have a good night, everyone.